Many organizations in both the military and the civilian industry struggle in establishing peer learning communities within their organizations. While there are formal training programs available to help start these peer learning communities, many of them are too formal or too rigid to really stick over time. Stay with us, for on this episode of the Evolving Warfighter, we'll discuss an organic way to start a peer learning community that may be as easy as a conversation over the first cup of coffee in the morning. Welcome back to the Evolving Warfighter. My name is Dr. Franklin Annis. About 4 years ago, I had the opportunity to work with a remarkable group of soldiers. We would come together for the first 15 minutes of every day and share a cup of coffee, and we'd discuss the self-development materials that we were researching on our own time. We nicknamed this group Coffee and Clausewitz. One individual from the group would share a parable or a vignette about what they were studying for about 10 minutes. Then the group might discuss this topic for about 5 minutes before going about the work of the day. Starting the day in this fashion sparked our creativity and really started to drive our innovation. I greatly enjoyed this group because of the wide array of topics and materials that were brought up in discussion, just because of the variance in individual interests of the individuals involved in this group. However, it seemed like everything we were discussing was somehow examined in terms of the context of how we might employ it in our current profession. The success of this small little group was quite remarkable. Several of the individuals involved in this group went on to study advanced level degrees, including doctorate degrees. Other individuals in this group were selected as instructors for our non-commissioned officer academy. And maybe most importantly, the impact on our least educated individual in the group, a man that had never gone to college. He can now explain the United States Constitutions and the philosophies that it was built upon. Even though he has no college degree, I would place him in a competition with anyone that had. Now that I've described the group and let you know some of the lasting impact it had on its members, let's talk about how you might try to start one of these groups in your own organization. First, as a leader, you need to be the model of the behaviors you wish to see in your subordinates or your employees. Essentially, this means that if you're not self-developing now, you need to immediately begin. You need to be searching out books to read, listening to podcasts, or taking a look at other educational opportunities. It is likely that you'll have to lead the conversation in a Coffee and Clausewitz format several times to provide a good example for what you wish to see from your employees or the individuals participating in this group. This means that you need to have a collection of small little vignettes on something to do with leadership development or some other type of application that you could apply into your business or industry to be able to tell your employees. Make sure you take time and collect good quality vignettes to tell your subordinates. Again, especially when the group is first starting, you want to provide a good example and a good quality of example of what you wish to see inside this group. One of the best pieces of advice that I'd ever received in the military is knowing the difference between a professional and an amateur. And the difference is that professionals get paid. If you want your subordinates or your employees to be professionals in terms of peer learning communities or self-development, consider paying them for the time that they participate in these activities. This is especially true in terms of working with a group like Coffee and Clausewitz. While it is a small investment to pay an employee 15 minutes a day to come together in a peer learning community, it will really pay dividends, because participation in these type of communities will require significant study and research on off-duty hours. If you make that small payment towards the individual, it will incentivize them to establish and maintain that learning community and really better themselves and develop themselves on off-duty hours. I almost guarantee you the end result will result in a better subordinate or employee if you make this small investment. I'd encourage you to allow your subordinates or employees to study the topics that most interest them, provided it can be related to your current job or mission. I'm sure we could all look back at our own educational experience and think of the one professor or one teacher that was really passionate about the subject they were teaching, and how that passion really became contagious inside the classroom. We want the same thing to happen here. Now, if you assign topics that individuals aren't interested in, they're really not going to be able to speak about it passionately. So please allow them to investigate their own personal interests. Additionally, your employees and subordinates may bring topics and useful information that you may never have thought of. An example from my own personal experience in my Coffee and Clausewitz group was an example by Sergeant First Class Andrew Singsauce. He talked about the Hudson Bay Company. There was something called a Hudson Bay Start. When the Hudson Bay Company was going out for a long journey, they would take their boats and travel a few miles downstream, at which time they would stop and they would set up camp. In this way, they would ensure that all the equipment that they intended to take along on their voyage had been packed. If something was missed, they were easily within a distance that they could run back within a day and retrieve the missing items. Now, this might be something that we could consider in the current military. Do you need to practice setting up your headquarters or packing your equipment? It might be worthwhile today to even take your equipment out of an armory and go try to set up in the parking lot or maybe the field right next to your armory to ensure that your soldiers understand how to pack their equipment and prepare for a mission. It's unfortunate that my original Coffee and Clausewitz group got broken up through the normal course of military reassignments. However, I find it interesting that as members bump into each other out in the force, we almost always begin our conversations by asking if they've read certain books or listened to certain podcasts. We almost immediately jump back into that peer learning community mindset. And these individuals really carried this approach out to the larger force. These individuals, because of their self-development, tended to be high performers. And because they are high performers and they had the ability to share their stories and their peer learning techniques to other soldiers, had a dramatic impact that really echoed throughout the formations. With all the success I had in my community, I challenge you to begin your own peer learning group. So grab a cup of coffee, a few motivated soldiers, and get to work. Before I go, I'd like to thank the Army leader for the opportunity to publish an article on this topic in their journal. I encourage everyone that's looking for leadership development resources to take a look at the Army Leader. You can find them at thearmyleader.co.uk. For the American soldiers out there, I encourage you to take a look at this site. It's always interesting to take a look at the leadership development materials that are being produced by our allies. They might spark an interesting new thought or drive innovation that we can use inside the United States military. As always, thank you for watching the Evolving Warfighter. Please like, share, and comment below. For more videos on the topic of military self-development, I encourage you to subscribe to the Evolving Warfighter. For another video on the topic of peer learning groups, specifically one invented by a founding father, Benjamin Franklin, I'll leave a link here. Until next time, focus on your self-development so we can dominate the modern battlefield.